Hello, everybody, and thanks so much for joining us on the NABLL Weekly Talks this week, and hopefully for every week from now on. We've got Tim Semish from the board, and you run the Nashville Ignite team.
Yep.
Uh, how has the season been going for you? I mean, we were going to do this all the time, but it kind of got so busy, and you had so much stuff going on, you couldn't really make a lot of them. But obviously, now the season's going. How you feeling about it?
Pretty good. Yeah, that was my fault. I overextended myself a little bit between the league and just work. But opened up my Tuesday nights moving forward. But excited from a board member standpoint. The league's been great. We got some teams that are almost halfway done with their season, almost done with their season. We got other teams like mine that are just starting. Minnesota played their first game last night. So we're full cylinders, ahead. We're cooking with gas, and I mean, I really like what I see from a lot of the teams that are posting and a lot of high level play. And I'm excited to get to nationals, even though we just started myself, but I'm excited to see the accumulation of the season already.
Yeah, absolutely. I've kind of got the record pulled up there. So you see, like the Wild, they're off to kind of continuing how they were last year. We'll get into the power rankings here in a little bit, but
Yeah, Wild is gonna wild. I think they won like two or three off-season tournaments too. They just got a good core group of guys, got a lot of experience on that team. And then I'm happy to see. I'm sorry, Cambridge. I'm gonna skip you guys, but I'm happy to see my boys at number three. Uh,
well, that was why I had you pulled up there, and so I wanted you to kind of explain to everybody the difference, and then the difference between how you guys look at these, where you look at the percentage, because there's no other factors. I'm guessing you guys have like a spreadsheet or something, and this is mathematical how the like it.
yeah, the website is just your traditional, just data collection of like wins and losses. It's not taking into any like human factors. So this is just your computer generated, the old school BCS, if you will, for any football fans out there, just like wins and losses. But when we're talking about power rankings, and we can kind of explain this too as we go through this week's power rankings, is we got to take into account history of regions, competition of regions, and how those regions fare outside of their own when they're playing outside teams, both at nationals historically, but also in season games. And one of the things we want to do at the league, and this is why we made it, we encourage teams to play outside of regions, and we've got away from the old leagues models of two teams being in their own region, is we really want to see teams play more teams more often. So really kind of using that as part of the weighted scale. But I mean, you look at
Well, like you guys had so you take into account like the Thousand Island Spirits went out, they played Paper City, went
Mhm.
back and forth, and then you see how Paper City fares in their league with Maine, who we've seen has only lost in nationals in the NABLL until this year. So I mean, there's a lot to kind of take into account, and I figure a lot of the fun in this it really is the kind of smack talk that goes along because no matter how you figure it out, there's never nobody's going to be happy. Like you can't please everybody with it.
Yeah, every week when I post the power rankings, I love to kind of scroll through the comments and just kind of see the smack talk going back and forth. And it reminds me of my college football days. The SEC will be the SEC, and that can be the Northeastern teams, but there's still going to be those outliers from quote unquote weaker conferences that can still play with the big boys. The power rankings are a true kind of accumulation of that versus this screen right here on the website is uh is just computer data, just wins and losses. That's about it. Can't really take in those human factors.
No, so let's kind of jump into the power rankings. I'm pretty excited about this. I know not everybody will love it as much, but it starts with the Westminster Wild. We talked about them a little bit. They won. I tried to stop it. There we go. Uh, but they won nationals, and as we talked about, we had a chance to film them in that Delaware tournament, and
Yeah,
they tore it up there. That is a team that I had a chance to talk to them. They started out as mainly field lacrosse players, they said, but wow, have they learned how to play box lacrosse.
yeah. I remember looking at them last year because I know some of those guys out in that region, and then Tony and Rich from the Golden Bears are on the board. And I remember looking at their roster, and I'm thinking, oh wow, they got a lot of talent. They got a lot of field players, and they got Joel Tinney, who knows a thing or two about a thing or two. But then watching them at nationals, I was very surprised. It was like their first game in. I was like, oh wow, these guys can play. They moved the ball well. They hit on defense. They got a good goalie. and they're a force to be reckoned with for sure in this league for quite a while.
Yeah, no, they definitely are, and like you said, it's impressive to me that you don't really think of you know that area down in Virginia, southern, mid coast, I guess, region of the country as being a hotbed for box lacrosse. Yeah, our national champs right now for this league are out of that, and off and running again this year.
Yeah, yeah, they're looking for a repeat, and if I know those guys, they're looking to win their region handily and then show up to nationals expecting to win nationals.
Yeah, yeah, I would assume that's kind of how it is. And I mean, how about this one? So, what a shock. I mean, it was for Maine at least, I bet. Nobody says, you're going to go into the season undefeated, but I'm sure them and a lot of other people did not think they were going to, lose again this year.
No, yeah, they in this league in the NABLL they hadn't lost outside of the national championship, and I'm sure they were expecting the same thing. But kind of excites me to see Cambridge coming in and renewing that rivalry. I mean, box in the states doesn't go that far back, but I know Cambridge is one of the oldest teams, one of the oldest organized teams. So I was kind of as much of a fan of Maine as I am. I was actually excited to see that because that just means we have more to watch in that region, kind of moving forward.
Well, one thing that I will say is the amount of parity that we actually have in this league. Like when you go through and that is one thing I wish we could see the wins and losses as I pulled through just like the completed games, because when you look at a lot of these teams, the Riverhawks lost one to the Eddy, they won one to the Eddy. I see the Golden Bears beat the um, Arrows by 1 goal. So it's like, there's so much parity in this league. Every team on any night, it seems like, really can win. And I mean, that's why you play the games. And that's the thing with box lacrosse is really with a hot goaltender, you can
Hmm.
basically, he can, if he can stop them from scoring or shut them out, which I didn't think was possible till I watched the Can-Am team shut out another one. And it was actually the last place team that shut out the first place team. So now I'm convinced any team in this sport on any given night is, they can win.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to the Wild. If I remember correctly, they split their regional playoffs last year with the Arrows. The Arrows were the last place team in the Mid Atlantic going into the championship series. They pulled off an upset against the Golden Bears, and then beat they beat the Wild either the first or the second game and forced a game three, and then game three was close. So we almost didn't even have Westminster at nationals.
Yeah,
And I mean, not to throw shade at the Arrows, but I don't think anybody is going to think the Arrows would win a national championship, and they almost beat the eventual national champion. So yeah, you're totally right. Anybody can beat anybody in this league. That's the beauty of it.
yeah, well, we'll get into the playoffs and stuff in a little bit here, but I mean, here we go. We've got a brand new team essentially, but it's a brand new team with a lot of box lacrosse experience. This is not your typical brand new box lacrosse team that started with like, maybe one guy who knows how to play box and he gets a bunch of buddies together and says, "Let's play." It's the area where the Powell brothers grew up. The Akwesasne Nation is, they border each other, so
Yeah.
tons of talent, tons of experience out there, and they've got a couple losses. They lost to Paper City, they lost to the Oswego Riverhawks, which is a pretty young team. But I tell you what, that Riverhawks team, they picked up a couple of Can-Am guys too. So it's interesting to see which rosters show up for these teams, and kind of like some teams have a home roster and they don't travel always so well. So, but I
Yes.
mean, the Spirits, they've obviously traveled fairly well throughout the season, with the exception of the one Oswego loss. They've done very well.
Yeah. Yeah. I love watching these guys. They're big, they're mean, they know how to move the ball, they know how to shoot the ball, and they got some good goalies. I mean, like you said, I don't know if they didn't travel when they played Paper City or when they played Oswego. But that's another variable that plays into this league is at the end of the day, we're all semi-professional guys. Some guys can't make the trips, some guys can't make the drive, whatever it is.
Really
Wife, kids, jobs, families. Yeah. So anybody can do
dedication.
it. But I mean, we were talking before the show. Thousand Island is a team that if they can get their guys to come to Chicago, I feel bad whoever pulls them in pool play because they're gonna be out there, they're gonna be hitting, they're gonna be scoring goals, and they're a team to be reckoned with. That's for sure.
Yeah, and we've got the Yeti in the chat saying they haven't been to the igloo yet, so we don't know how the season's going to play off. They have not been.
That's true.
Yeah, I tell you, that's going to be. I cannot wait. That's the 21st. That game. Anybody watching this show, definitely tune into that game on the 21st. That's going to be amazing. Plus, it's a sweet setup for us as far as they are. We've got a lot of nice equipment there. We run a pretty good like production out of the Yeti house, so that's a nice thing. But
And that'll be a featured game of the year for sure. That might be the game of the year by the end of it.
yeah, you never know. I mean, we will definitely see here, but I mean, it's been nonstop. And then I mean, Maine, we talked about it already. They've got the one loss this year, but other than that, they've done pretty well. They've beaten, the rest of the teams in their division now, so it's definitely I don't know. You wonder if it was an eye-opening experience because some of these teams you start off on a run. You get like Rochester did at the beginning of the year. Rochester was 7-0, but then they couldn't close it out. So
Mm-hmm.
you really wonder some of these teams get off to a hot start. You get off to 3-0, 4-0 in your division, and then next thing you know, it only takes one guy gets hurt, somebody has a kid, somebody who knows.
I mean that. I mean, there's that, but also this could be one of those eye-opening things of like maybe they kind of had like a hangover from nationals of we're good, we're the staple child at nationals, and then you go in and you lose a game to a team down the road. Now they're practicing a little harder. Now they're hitting a little harder. Now they're shooting a little harder, and that could be the thing that kind of wakes them up. And now they're a force to be reckoned with. So it could go one of both ways. It could be one of those things where like, oh, the floodgates are open because that was a filmed game, so maybe other teams can kind of find some weaknesses, or that was a game that is going to wake them up a little bit, and they're going to pillage and burn the boats like they really like to say.
Yeah, yeah, no, I love their Instagram. That is one thing. Kyle Baker does an amazing job with the social media up there too. I stole some of his stuff. We're gonna play a little bit of it over when we get through this. But yeah, the way they do it and the Northman fans dominated the chat box. Horns up, even Paul saying it in the chat box because they absolutely dominated the chat box and the Northmen is really as far as showing up in the chats, I would have to say probably they were the most active in the chats at all nationals.
I believe it. I mean, they got a good fan base. They traveled well all the way down to Columbus from Maine last year. Yeah, they got a good group. They travel just like I would expect them to, being the Maine Northmen. They're just like the Vikings that their logo is. They show up in crews and they support each other. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, I like how, yeah, exactly like you said. They show up a cruise and they go, and then the Oswego Riverhawks. So the Riverhawks, that has been an impressive team. They have a bunch of young guys. They've also got a lot of talent. They're starting to accumulate more and more players that have a lot of box lacrosse experience and talent. But I tell you what, they're young men. This is their, I think, third year now of playing box lacrosse, really, for a lot of those guys, and you can see it, man. Do they look good?
Yeah, I've only got to see them play once, but they look like they know what they're doing pretty well. I wouldn't have guessed that they were a 3-year team.
Yeah, I
And
mean
I know they got
yeah,
some old heads, I'm sure, that are coaching. They've been around, but they got some talent. And it's again, I mean, we're kind of stuck in the Northeast right now, but they got some young talent and they got some old knowledge that I think is kind of the perfect accumulation for them.
and really, so when you talk about nationals, that is one thing too, though. So people, I mean, we'll talk about it here a little bit more after the power rankings, but really, just because you do amazing in the year too, doesn't mean you have a team that's built for nationals. You kind of got to have a bunch of young guys or exceptional goal scorers, but basically because nationals is it's a different animal all on its own. You're out there, you're playing possibly 6 games. You're really
Mhm.
getting after it. That's a whole nother level of athlete really that you need.
Yeah. It's not a men's tournament. It's nationals, and you pay the price with your body and mentally too. I mean, I didn't even play last year, and I was exhausted.
Yeah.
So I can't even imagine getting cross-checked, hit, and tripped and fallen and hitting people myself. So yeah, you got to be able to get your crew out there. You got to be able to know how to. You can't go out there and drink and party. You got to know how to recoup and recover. Which is why I think they're another team that could come to nationals if they can get their guys there. They got some young bloods, and young blood can play 6 games in 3 days.
Yeah, no, and that is such a big part. They've actually got a kid on their team from Can-Am that I film a lot from the Red Hawk, Schultzky, and I always say he has an unlimited gas tank. I tell you, that guy can run all day. I didn't even know how old he is, but he has just an absolute unlimited gas tank. He's good for at least one dive attempt a game. Transition guy, but he's very smart with the ball as far as you could tell. He's been playing in that Onondaga program forever. But so Nashville Ignite, you guys ended up in sixth. Congratulations, 3-0. So
Thank
how
you.
did you guys fare last year compared to like this year? You guys are starting out hot.
So we are this point of pride for me. This is our fourth year. Yeah, fourth year. And we've done a good job kind of recruiting a core group of guys, and then we have the benefit of being in Nashville. People move here all the time. But we've already won more games this year than we did last year or the previous year. And then the year before that, I don't even think we played at 3 total games. I think our first IBLA season was a joke. Well, it was the COVID year. So
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, no, we went down to Atlanta and we faced the brand new Atlanta team who I hate to admit it, but they're sneaky talented, and if they get a few more games under their belt, they could be a force down here.
How do you say
Um,
that? How do you say their team? Is it the Atlians?
I said the Atlians. They didn't correct me, so I'm gonna go with Atlians. I just call them ATL whenever I post about them because I don't want to say that too many times. But yeah, no, they had good numbers. They had a good team. They got some guys who clearly played box before. And then we played our divisional rival with Knoxville, who is sneaky talented. They got Anthony Malcolm from the Fort Worth team in the NLL, and he's done a good job, kind of
So
not
he played for
only.
Albany too, actually,
Yeah, he got traded this
last year.
last offseason, and his brother is also in Fort Worth as well.
Yeah.
Him
How
and his
did
brother are in the city.
how did you end
He
up with him?
he lives in Knoxville full time. He runs a club up there, so they use that club to kind of recruit some kids for their team. And that's his full time job outside of playing NLL, and I think he's in the PLL player pool as well. But yeah, so he's on their team. I mean, I gotta go out there and I gotta freaking guard an NLL player, and he's done a good job. You can tell they're young and sprightly. They're kind of like an early Oswego with him and a few other guys. They got some talent as well. And then we played our old divisional rival. Oh, no, sorry, Oak City. There's too many Oaks in this league.
There's a lot of
Oak
Oaks.
City Owls. And that was a good brawl with them. I think we beat them 11-6, but that was a good back and forth game. So yeah, it was a good time. We went down there. Had a good crew of guys from the Ignite squad, and we finally kind of put the pieces together that we've been working on for the last couple of years, and it was very vindicating to see. Very very nice to see.
Awesome. So the rest of like as you look through this the rest of the power rankings, one thing I notice here, so like the Seattle Kings, they were at Nationals last year, had a fairly good showing. Dave is a great goalie, which as we've talked about is such an equalizer in so many of these games. Charlotte, another team at Nationals last year. So they've kind of proven that they can hang. Austin, the Scorpions, how did you come about like now they did pretty well against the New Orleans team?
Yeah, so they fared really well against the New Orleans team and the brand new Dallas team. And taking history into account, it's not technically our league, but the Mambo were at Nationals a few years ago. And then also the Scorpions, they've just played in some, non-league tournaments, and they've done fairly well at those tournaments. So that's a brand new region for us, but I'm excited for whichever of those teams comes to Nationals. But for the Scorpions to kind of handle both those teams fairly well, it tells me that they got some talent. You don't win 16-6 unless you got some goal scorers. Even with a bad goalie, the box lacrosse goal is still small enough. You're not scoring 16 goals unless you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I watched a few of their posts and highlights, and they got some guys who can move the ball, and they got some guys who can hit, which in this league as a recipe means you can be trouble for people.
Oh no, absolutely. That is if you can score goals and you can put people on their ass and not allow them to be, in front of your net, so you really limit that ball movement cuz a lot of the goalies one thing is, I mean, everybody's an adult now. So if you give these goalies enough time, anybody that makes it to nationals especially is going to
Mm-hmm.
be able to set up on position and give you like an angle, get in at the right angle to limit your shot. So really, yeah, where you see the guys that can move the ball, hit those small passing windows, that is
Yeah.
and the Grizzlies they're a program that just when I was talking to the guy from Pittsburgh, that was funny too. He's like, no, they just put out little robots in their whole youth program. He goes, they have a whole army of they all come out, they can all play box lacrosse. They're all the same player. There's no like specialist. They just have transition guys that can play box lacrosse.
Yep. Yep. The only reason why I dropped them, I love the Grizzlies, and Brian, their GM's a great guy, is they got a loss, and just everybody else in this like 6 through 10 is the undefeated teams. That's all. Um, and I think their loss is to Columbus, which is a perennial kind of middle of the road team. So just again taking historical factors into equation of like one loss to a middle of the road team kind of drops you down. Whereas
Well,
those other teams, like they run their regions. So
yeah, and I was looking at it, and actually, because I was surprised, so they lost, and then the Detroit Hooligans. So I mean, that Great Lakes League, they oh, I forgot to pull the power rankings back up as I'm sitting here talking. But yeah, I was going through and I saw so the Hooligans also were able to beat the Coyotes. So I mean, this is a league where I'm like, do they have two completely different rosters based on where you're playing, or is it one of those things where really every team in there is just that talented that any night you never know who's going to win?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. Because
This
the Great Lakes is a lot like my region where you're driving 3+ hours, and at the end of the day, we all got stuff to do. Every hour your commute is to your games, you may lose 2 or 3 guys, and if that's your best lefty or your starting goalie or your best defender, like that can really affect the game. So you hope all those teams are full strength come to regionals, but I mean, we have Columbus. We're hosting them down here in August, so I'm excited to see them, see if they've gotten a lot better, which they clearly have. So I think Great Lakes is another region where it's like I would love to say the Grizzlies are the pennant nationals, but it could be anybody this year.
Yeah, no, it absolutely could be. It's yeah, because you see they beat the Hooligans, and you look at that and you think, okay, they beat them by 6 goals. Okay, maybe
Yeah,
yeah, maybe they could handle them. But then you see the Coyotes not only beat them but held them down under
great.
double digits. To any time you hold one of these guys that have been to nationals that has an offense under 10 goals, I think
Yeah,
like the whole reason the Riverhawks beat the Yeti in that last game was because they held them to 1 goal in the second half.
yeah. That's if you can do that, that's huge, especially in league play. Because come nationals in the first couple games when it's running clock, like if you can play good defense and you got a hot goalie, like you said, you don't even need a great offense. You just need a kind of good offense.
Yeah, you just need something decent that can get you in. Because you would
Or just
assume,
transition. Like there are some teams last year that held in games in nationals purely off of transition alone.
yeah, yeah, and you never know when you get a team all of a sudden that shows up like Collar City, where the next thing you know, it's like really, they're fading fast. They show up, and then all of a sudden, guys are getting hurt. They didn't have a deep roster to begin with. Then you get out there, and it can really change the pace of it. Yeah, the way that's one of my favorite parts of this league though is really I've not been to a game where you're like, okay, this is decided that this team's going to win. And I know all the GMs like to think it's decided, but as you can tell looking through these standings that has definitely not been the case at all. I mean, and when you look through this leaderboard, I love this. So I noticed he's got a 100% save percentage. I
Yeah,
actually
and,
that
Connor, I don't think that's accurate.
well, but it's 100%. So 3 saves, I think it was, or 5 saves, but he's at 100%. How often can anybody ever say that? So Connor Waller being the wall right now at 100%.
We may have to put a stipulation on there, like you're not allowed on there until you make 20 saves or something like that. Gotta get a game's worth of list in there.
That's true. They've got a lot of talent for goalies up in the area because, like you see, so I mean, as you're looking at the saves, you got Crosby 198, Jack Beck, who is the full-time goalie for the Riverhawks. He definitely doesn't have 100% because you're not going to have 100% in that division. And
Yeah,
then it's they call him Gunn. I'm not going to butcher his first name again like I always do. Jobson always tries to help me out, and I'm sorry. So it's Gunn Horn David. He is he's a beast, man. He watching him play against the Yetis, that guy is good. And Custer, I've watched him play a few times. He's another one of those guys. And then you've got Duncan up in the North Bend. There's so many good goalies in this league. We've got a couple of the U21 goalies out there. So
yeah,
yeah, you really never know which goalie's going to get hot and completely turn a game around.
yeah. I remember Custer of the Wild in the pool play games. He was, I remember thinking like, oh, he might be their weak link, and then come bracket play, one of the best goalies of the tournament next to Duncan. And it was like, oh wow, like night and day difference. He went home and came back a different guy.
Yeah, it's insane, some of these guys, and when you get a hot goalie like that. So then we've got Camden Smith for the Paper City Oaks is actually your points leader with 40. Uh, and then you wonder with some of these teams, how have the teams been? What have you noticed as far as guys putting their stats up? Is it really are the Northeast guys just that much better at putting their stats up with
Uh,
New England?
well, the Northeast has played a lot more games, so they're going to dominate the leaderboard until it's all said and done. I think most of those teams are done when like my region and some of the other regions are only halfway done.
Just
There's
starting
that,
to.
but I will say they are the golden students, if you will. They get the most praise for putting their stuff in the day of games. They use the live stat tracker. If they don't use a live stat tracker, they manually input games probably within a couple hours of games. Whereas like other times I'm doing the power rankings and I got to double check teams' Instagrams because they haven't uploaded their game on
Yeah,
Tuesday morning when their game was Saturday.
you're trying to figure
Um,
out if they actually played it or not. You're like, you guys did play, right?
yeah, I think I literally think the Wild has 3-0 on their record on the power rankings because I think their game was uploaded late. And I know everybody's got stuff to do, but yeah, the Northeast teams, I have never been to a game in person, but I'd be willing to bet they got 2 or 3 people watching for stats. They got people tracking everything.
Usually
Um,
each team has their own person, and I will say I know Utica has Molly Leary, who is like she was at nationals. She
oh,
does, yeah. She's
yeah, shout out Molly. Molly was a lifesaver at nationals last year. She did stats for I think 95% of the games, and she was great.
yeah,
Love
she
Molly.
is on point. I don't know how she does it all the time. That I have no interest in that job whatsoever. But yeah, and when you look through the leaderboard, so the Will Hardy is a young guy who's only been playing box for a few years, and his dad happens to be a ref up here too. I notice he doesn't ref very many of their games, which I'm sure is by design.
Yeah,
But
probably.
yeah, but yeah, then you see so like Alex Cook going to the Spirit from the Yeti man, and he's got 22 goals. It'll be interesting to see how this Northeast plays out. I can't wait for the playoffs. But as you said, they're always pretty good about putting their stuff in.
Yeah, yeah, they're the poster child for it for sure. But when it all comes to fruition, mid August, I would hope the goals aren't one Paper City guy and then the rest Thousand Island guys. I'd hope we have a few more logos up there. Maybe it is. Maybe Thousand Island just scores 1,000 goals. But that's we'll see come August.
It'll be interesting to see, but I mean, so yeah, when you're looking here though, I mean, and you see a lot of these teams, they spread out their offense, and you got to wonder with some of these teams. So do you have like one or two guys that scores goals? So if that guy doesn't make it, or do a lot of these guys have the next man up mentality? Because like when you look at the Grizzlies, even though they did lost to the Coyotes, they happen to have three on the top leaderboard with pretty much all the teams represented in the division.
Yeah. And that's another key, when it comes to teams and like how the GMs run their teams and how the coaches run their teams is do you go high school ball and run your offense through one or two guys, or do you teach a system so that it's plug and play and next man up? Because when it comes to nationals, teams will be able to see this. And if I'm playing Thousand Island, I'm going to look at their board and go, oh crap, everybody can score goals. I can't single a guy out. But if I'm seeing another team where it's like, oh, that's their point getter, cool. I'm just going to guard them the whole game and we'll
Yeah,
dare the other to shoot.
like when you look right here, here's a prime example. So you look at the points, and they are very spread out. They've got what, four guys with three goals. Yeah,
Yeah, they're
that's
oh
a
yeah,
yeah. They only played it looks like the one weekend that now because of the distance those guys travel, they kind of go do the round robin games is what it seems like.
yeah.
So
Yeah, they're I'd say outside of the East, I feel like that's the model for probably 90% of the league. Maybe 75% of the league is we got to do these joint round robin um, games instead of being able to do like weekly games the way the Northeast teams do because the Northeast is just so closer proximity.
yeah, that's and so like and I was laughing. So even with the Metro team, like when I click on this and you see that the Collar City Kings, the Metro in a different division is still a closer drive than most of these teams are to each other in the same division everywhere else in the NABLL.
Yeah, that was one thing. We spent a good chunk of the off season, and it was we were sitting on pins and needles to make sure everybody committed to the season. But we have a Google map, and we were sitting there comparing drive times and stuff like that. And selfishly, that was one thing I was thankful for because historically, we had to compete with Atlanta and Charlotte in my region. And Charlotte's a 5 hour drive, Atlanta's a 4 hour drive. And then when we added Raleigh, and then when Virginia Beach got added, Virginia Beach is 10 hours from Nashville, Raleigh's 8 hours from Nashville. Like, I am so jealous of these Northeastern teams. And I think like the DC teams, they play like weekly on Thursdays. I'd love to be able to do that. Sell tickets, do the whole shebang. But that's the beauty of this league is everybody kind of runs their own model. And
Everybody's growing into it, yeah. I
Mhm.
got to shout out. So Will Smith is the Fresh Prince of Rockland County. He had such a great nickname. I remember it from last year. I don't know who it was that was sitting up in the stands. They told us that he was a lot of fun to watch. But now, what's interesting for me is I've heard talking to a couple guys in that league that the Westminster team lost a few of their guys too. They kind of spread out to start the other team down in that Mid Atlantic region, but you still see they are just tearing it up.
Yeah, but I will say that the Charm City team for a first year team, they look organized. They look like they know what they're doing. So who knows? Maybe that was the IQ that left that kind of taught Westminster to be Westminster. So maybe we got a little division rivalry brewing there. That'd be kind of interesting to see.
Yeah. And now I'm looking at the Midwest, and even though with the Wheat Kings, I did see Nick was actually supposed to be on here today with us. Unfortunately, he had a work thing come up, so he couldn't make it. But this would be his division.
Well, we
Right.
are missing the St. Paul team hasn't played yet. The brand new team actually. So this is only the one. I think that was their first game in the region last night, actually, which was a traditionally not close game. Was very close. I don't know. Did you watch it at all last night?
No, I haven't.
So the Wheat Kings came out early swinging. Invergrove, I would say it wrong. Invergrove fixed it, tied it at 11, I think, in the third. Wheat Kings pulled away, looked like they were going to win the game by like 10 or 12, and
where
then
where
they
were they
they
playing on?
what?
What were they playing on?
What do you mean? Like what
Who?
surface or
Yeah, who
like
was streaming it?
it was like a local like public access
Oh,
channel.
that's right, because she has the. Does she?
hmm
Did they get it streamed online though?
Yeah, I mean I found it through my phone and they posted a link. They had commentators and everything. They did a great job. They had replays and
No,
the
yeah,
whole
they
nine.
have a legit. That's right. Now I remember talking to yeah, Rachel about it. They have a legit like their public access, their local place was, they come and do it. So they've got a full
Yeah,
actual crew, somebody who really knows what they're doing. It's probably way better, way more professional than mine looks, I would imagine.
I mean, no, yours still looks great, but it was a good thing. They had replays, primed up. They had two commentators that clearly at least had watched box lacrosse before. They weren't shell shocked by it.
That although that would be kind of interesting to take somebody who thinks like, you take like a hockey guy or somebody who watches sports and be like, "Hey, come watch your first box lacrosse game."
Maybe we should do that at nationals. We should just bring somebody that has never watched box lacrosse before and have them commentate.
I like it. I'm sure sometimes they think I am when I'm, especially when I'm running the computer and all of a sudden I forget what's going on and I'm like, I have no idea who scored that goal. I just hit the replay. I'm like, okay, oh, there it is. Great play.
Oh, yeah, no, the game last night, I caught the third and the fourth, and it was a really good game. I mean, Mimbo's boys pulled it out. They got a lot of talent on that team. They got a lot of guys who can score goals, but
Well,
the
that's
they did well.
that is one thing is so the Wheat Kings there, they benefited from when the Swarm were in Minneapolis. They
Mhm,
ended up with some leftover players, or I'm not sure if you want to call them transplants, but essentially they ended up with people who built some roots there that stayed.
mhm,
So they and he had said before that even though they kind of have been the perennial like powerhouse in the area with it. He said the other teams are catching up fast. He said they gave him a run last year in the playoffs, and
yeah.
yeah, it's been. I think they actually lost one of their games too. He said he goes, it was yeah, it was a a humbling experience. So props to everybody out there doing a great job. It's so awesome to see it growing, and that's why I love watching the Riverhawks here. Is they're the youngest team that just when they go, I mean, Paul's probably driving a little nuts when I say that, but I do love watching all those young guys because that first game I watched, the Yeti play them, you could tell like it was not the team that's playing now. They're a bunch of experienced guys that didn't really know boxing. Now they understand it. They're fast. They're, the offense is moving the entire time. They're not just standing there trying to look for somebody to, hit the old field shot where you sprint up the floor and throw a 100-mile-an-hour shot at his leg pads.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, that's a testament to this league. I mean, we're year 2, and teams are already starting to close the gap on the quote unquote perennial powerhouses. But I mean, that's the goal of the league is to see a team like Oswego or the Isotopes or someone else like the Scorpions, a new team that has a young college kid now who 3 years from now, 4 years from now is in a camp in NLL or makes a roster in the NLL. Like, old guys like me are great. We want to play as long as we can, but this league is to get guys playing pro ball, playing legit high level ball, and it's more and more teams are doing it.
Yeah, no, and I think that's so I've talked to a couple guys about that. And so the league has really they're cracking down on the on the fighting and stuff, and we kind of wanted to talk about that for a minute. But that is really, this league is going towards, basically, you want to take some guys who know really how to play box lacrosse, and we want to teach young American players, get these athletes going and kind of moving up and get them the floor experience that they need.
Yeah. I mean, just from my personal experience, I had to try out with the San Diego Seals, and they straight up told me when they let me go, like, you're just not a top player when it comes to stick skills and box IQ. You can hit guys and you can play defense here and there and you can fight guys, but we don't need a brawler. We need someone who can, push the ball in transition, pass the ball, pick down, know the game ins and outs. We don't really have time to teach you that. So when they let me go, their first option was, how about you go north? Let's move you to Edmonton. Let's get you on a team in Calgary, play junior B, play junior, or not junior B, sorry, play senior B, senior A ball for a year or two, and then we'll get you on the team. I'm 25, 26 years old. I don't have the time to move up to Canada for 4 months out of the year. So, our end goal and, my personal goal is for a kid who gets cut maybe year 1, he can just play on his local team, or the NLL team can move him to the local team. And then, it's kind of like a farm system that way, where we can have, the older guys who still want to play high level ball can still play high level ball, but we can get these younger guys the opportunity and the education so that they're, making money, making paychecks as the game grows.
Yeah, I mean that is huge. I mean, you get so many places now that the game is expanding. That is one thing that's awesome about the NABLL, is you guys have teams that play essentially in all kinds of different leagues, and every division kind of operates separately. So, Utica Eddie asked basically, how many fans do they get at these round robins? I mean, you can't speak for everybody, but like, what do you guys have at yours? Is it just like kind of friends and family, moms, grandmas, aunts,
Yeah,
uncles?
it's friends and families, and it really does depend on where you are. So this past weekend, we had 4 teams in Atlanta, and I'm gonna say at best there was 50 people watching one of the games, and probably 20 of those guys were guys who were just done stretching or hadn't started stretching for the next game. But yeah, you got girlfriends and wives and kids and moms and uncles and aunts, and then a couple, friends and family showing up. Last year we hosted games here in Nashville, and we had a couple local youth teams came out. I think we had about not even 100 people. That's a pipe dream. Maybe 90 people in the stands for, we played Louisville, but Louisville's just close enough. So yeah, it's not what you see some of these northern teams get, where like I think I watched one of the Thousand Islands home games and they had a lot of people. I know Utica gets a good amount of people to come to the
So
to
we
the
were, yeah, we were just talking about that today. So his last game was probably between 300 and 400. The one nice thing about, I will say, where yeah, it's amazing there. It's crazy to watch it. And so one of the things he does though is he has the kids play in front of his game sometimes, and
Mhm.
you'll see that. So then we saw a lot of return parents actually. This game there was no kids that played ahead of them, but I noticed like a lot of the parents, it was the same group of kids there. So we had the kids, and they do a great job with the jumbotron. But the where the Spirits play, their arena with like, I don't know, probably 200 people, maybe 300 people in there. That is, it's like the prime number. It's like packed
It's
standing.
all you need. I mean, 200 people is a lot of people, and whether you're charging for tickets or not, that's a good atmosphere to play in front of. Especially like that's the beauty of box and these rinks is like you don't need a packed NLL stadium. If it's a small rink with only 200 seats, like you feel like you're playing in front of a packed NLL stadium. But loud noises, that's the dream for a lot of these teams, is to kind of get a home field advantage, because it does. It plays into the emotion of the game.
Oh yeah, it completely does. And then so he actually posted this kid won every face-off with the exception of that one violation.
Yeah, I want to see this kid play live, and not I'm not knocking the other faceoff guys in the region, but I want to see him go against a couple other guys because you saw that at nationals too. Was the teams that had the dominant faceoff guy tended to do a little bit better. Like it's another aspect of the game. But the beauty of box is you face off, you can't just be a fogo. You got to be able to play at least defense.
You got to be able to play defense or offense, but you even more than that though is the offensive rebound. So we that I want to say that Yeti game, the Yeti out face offed or they won more face offs than the Riverhawks did, but I'm telling you
Mhm.
that offensive rebound and those extra possessions is that's huge. Or being able to just maintain the possession basically to get quality shots.
Yeah, yeah. I had to teach my guys that this weekend a little bit of like, hey, if we get a rebound, it's a fresh 30. Like, let's chill for 15 seconds. Like,
Yeah.
let's hit some bodies, let's move the ball. Like, you don't got to shoot 10 seconds into a fresh restart.
Yeah, and that's one thing that comes with a lot of experience. So that's where like you start to see more of these teams that are starting to get the experience, but the teams that have the kids programs, I think are where you're really going to see, that's where the real, talent comes from in like 5 years.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just good lacrosse is having that system. And I mean, I think we can't force anyone to do anything, but I think as a league, the board, we love seeing these teams that have these youth teams popping up, or they're associated with a youth team, just because I mean that's the longevity of the league. Unfortunately, all of us are going to age out sooner or later. Like I love that every year I pick up two or three college kids, and I know other teams do too. And you just got to kind of build that pipeline. But if these teams that have these like middle school, high school teams, and college age teams like that just pays dividends down the road for the next however many
Yeah,
years.
Justin Otto with that West Rock, that whole youth program he runs, and then
Mm-hmm.
he runs the other one. He's a busy guy. He does all kinds of stuff. But yeah, the
I don't know how he does it. I legitimately don't know how he does it.
no, absolutely not. His schedule, he must be a master scheduler to fit it all in is all I can think.
Yeah, and he still makes our meetings and phone calls too. So half the time he's on the road when he's doing it, but he's
Yeah.
he's but yeah, that's one thing that like you look at Otto's team. They struggled last year. They might be struggling this year, but they get some high school age kids that know box 2 years from now, 3 years from now, when they're 22, 23, they could be a force.
Yeah, unfortunately he might miss the the real, the fruits of the labor, I guess, essentially. But yeah, that team is gonna be yeah.
Yeah, if I know Otto, he'll die on a bench somewhere. He'll, he'll,
Oh
he'll be
no,
coached.
but I'm saying I know he still likes to get out on the floor and run around a little bit, and that
That's true.
by the time you really see like, because it takes a good 5 to 10 years really before you get a full team of youth guys where you've like, okay, we've
Yeah,
trained these guys, everybody knows the system.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, especially with like the unfortunate side of box is there's such a small window of the year to play a box. Like you don't play it as much as you play field lacrosse, and then you got other sports to deal with, especially with little kids. And it's just a small window that you just don't get a lot of floor time, especially you don't get a lot of game time. I mean, 6 games may seem like a lot in the moment, but it's in the grand scheme of things, it's really not.
No, no, and that's one thing I didn't realize how few games it was because I cover so many different teams that to me
Mhm.
it's like a million games. But then I was talking to Paul about the schedule the other day and I was like, "Wait, you guys only really have one game left against the Spirits to try to redeem yourself." So I mean, every game in that 6 game season matters so much.
Yeah, and you gotta learn while you can, build while you can, and get the team as ready as they're possible because those 6 games lead up to however each region they decide their own format for regionals. But then it truly is. Sometimes you only get one game at your regionals to win or go home, or you only get 2 games if you're the top seed. Like it's a short time to kind of get teams ready, and I'm sure every team has 4 or 5 guys that have never played box every single year. So you got to teach guys very fast.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, you're learning. You gotta, like you said, you gotta learn quick. You gotta kind of figure it out on the fly. So a lot of these teams will have preseason games. You see a benefit with some of these teams that have, like Westminster, they play together. It seems a lot more. It's not as short of a season for Westminster. Utica has Bank City, so they make a couple of tournaments, but they're not, full time. Like Maine, they came to last night too. You see some of these teams. I think we'll start to see more and more of the NABLL teams, because the guys the GMs actually own their own team. Like you guys don't hold hostage the logo, so you could use it
Yeah,
anywhere else.
and that's one thing we want is we want more teams playing more tournaments, and we've discussed doing off-season tournaments. We've discussed the possibility of doing like doing tournaments based on where you fall in your regions. So, the top two teams go to, this tournament over here, say in Chicago for nationals, but then, the lower two teams in each region go to this tournament over here in Austin, Texas, or wherever, just because we know those teams can play more games. And, even if it's a weekend of games, you get 4 games in, that's time on the floor together that you can't really replicate at home, especially if you're playing like a local pickup league. Like pickup's great, but it's not a league game. It's not full, live bullets flying.
It's not. You can't replicate live action. It's the same, I'm sure, with football, fighting, everything else. Because once you it's hard to get game speed. You don't run into your teammate as hard as you run into the guy from the other team when he scoops the ground ball up.
Yeah.
Just the
Well,
way.
and goalies can learn their teammates' tendencies. Players learn their goalies' tendencies. Like, it's a whole nother thing when you don't know the guy underneath that face mask. It's a lot. It's true live reaction. It's no pre knowledge, no nothing. So yeah, that's another one of our goals. This year with the refs, and I think next year we're gonna kind of look to see, okay, how can we get more teams more opportunities to play outside of the season, whether that's partnering with other tournaments or hosting our own, or just encouraging teams to play exhibitions, something. Because the more games, the more box, the better.
Yeah, no, I think the league has really focused on trying to get guys floor time, and I think that is huge. Having the insurance policy, just so that way these guys can play pickup every night of the week, gives guys a ton of floor time. I'll
Mhm.
be interested to see how you guys do go forward with the tournaments, though, because it's such a big part of the sport. So we're actually doing a tournament this weekend too, and it's kind of hard for teams because some teams don't want to during the season. Like even though the Yeti had this weekend off, there's a bunch of teams that get nervous because you got playoffs coming up, you got nationals coming up, but the off-season tournaments I think really could be, yeah, that would definitely be something to look
Yeah,
into.
yeah, that's one of our goals. And even if it's just partnering with outside tournaments, like I talked to Scott
Lax
with
nine.
yeah, about the possibility of like an all-star team, or like how can we get a couple teams in, stuff like that. Breckenridge, down here in the south with Bear Paw, they host tournaments. Like, we're trying to figure out ways of like how can we get more guys playing more box. Because yeah, in season it's tough. Like, I think there was a Breckenridge tournament 2 weeks ago, and I know some teams pulled out of that, or players at least pulled out of that, because you don't want to get hurt for the season. But yeah, at the end of the day, you got to play to get better. So
Yeah. No, and that is yeah, getting more games would be great for developing the officials. That is one thing. So one thing you see is anywhere that has a youth league, it's easy for the officials. It is hard to get time for officials. I mean, Dave did a bunch with that, but I mean, have you guys what essentially do you think could be done to get more? Or like, what do you recommend adults do if any adult, say Paul's got a friend who all of a sudden is like, hey, I want to ref, but I know I can't start at a men's league and the kids are nowhere to be found. Start doing
uh,
practices or
practices. Well, so first and foremost, I'm going to recommend anybody that wants to be a ref needs to watch Shorzy and Letterkenny. Because then if you want to be a good ref, you have to learn how to chirp and just talk back. The best refs I've ever been around. The refs we have down in Atlanta, I told them straight up, was like, you're my favorite refs because I can yell at you and you're just gonna yell right back at me in a productive way, but like still.
yeah,
So that's not what you want. Watch Shorzy, watch Letterkenny, learn how to talk some smack back and forth. But two, and probably should be first, is being around the game, whether that's a youth league, a local league, watching the NLL, watching the World Games. I mean, the last 3 box World Championships are all on YouTube, and just seeing the game and learning the game from that. And then the next step would be reaching out to Dave and reaching out to us, because Dave has done a great job of putting together a curriculum and some videos, and just building a network of assigners and experienced refs, guys who've refed World Games, guys who've refed NLL games.
they've got
Um,
videos from the NLL. He was saying they've got all the rule books. Yeah, so I mean that is definitely. But one thing, now I don't know if you've ever seen it. Do you guys ever have anybody come in that refs your like sparring matches at the gym? Because I know we used to have guys that would come to our pickup that wanted to learn, and they would essentially just start pickup games. They would kind of.
We've never done it at the gym just because you wouldn't believe the strange people that come into MMA gyms wanting to be refs or fighters. Uh, but
That's
on the
true.
lacrosse
That's true.
on the lacrosse side of things, we've done that down here where guys who want to ref like field high school, like they'll come and they'll shadow, or they'll just hang around a pickup game or a local men's league game or something like that. So, but at the end of the day, that's what it is. Like you gotta being a ref is hard. I ref hockey when I was younger, and I've ref some lacrosse games here and there. It is not an easy task, but you just got to be around the game and you got to know what to expect when you're when you're actually watching live bullets fly, and it's your responsibility to call stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, anybody that wants to be a ref, I recommend just being around the game more and watch it, watch it, watch it, and watch it more.
Yeah. No, that's basically it's like everything. You just got to be on it, on it, on it. Is time. Nothing replaces experience doing things. There's nothing that replaces time.
Yeah, yeah. I've had field refs before admit to me like, oh, this is my first year ref in field lacrosse. Don't tell me that.
It's like I could tell. Don't worry, bud.
You don't tell, buddy. Like, yeah, you just gotta watch it. You gotta know what stuff is. It's not a good look when a coach is explaining the rules to a ref.
No, you definitely don't want that.
Yeah.
I went to pull the chat up and there we go. I was gonna say it all of a sudden lost the browser feed for some reason, but yeah, we've had quite a few guys in the chat there. Jobson said it now. Win-win. Yeah, that's where the developing officials comment came from was you know, getting more and more officials and that's coming from somebody in a spoiled league compared to what it sounds like for some of these teams trying to get refs.
Yeah, if anybody wants to complain, we just had to fly refs from St. Louis to Atlanta because we couldn't find refs in Atlanta at that new box. So it's one of the things from the league that we are trying to get more officials connected across the league. And I think these refs from St. Louis are actually going out to Carolina in a couple weeks too. It's just to get more refs who know the game, but then also to get those refs around newer refs, so that way we can develop and not have to explain the rules in the parking lot pregame.
Yeah, yeah, that's fun.
Which
It's one
we've done here in the South before.
thing at least if you have some kind of you know understanding of it where if they were at least a lacrosse ref or a yeah, no complaints. We have a couple local guys that are going to be great. They get very lucky up there in that region. I have never heard of somebody having to fly in the refs though. That sounds expensive.
Oh, it's surprising it wasn't bad. Shout out Southwest, no free ads, but yeah, shout out Southwest for that. But I mean, it is what it is. It's what we got to do to play. And the guys who refed our games, that they've both refed some high level lacrosse, and they did a great job. They kept the games under control. As far as I know, nobody complained about them. But I mean, moral of the story is, yeah, the one of our goals this year, and Dave's doing a great job of just building a network of refs, building an education system for refs. Because I mean, even when you watch an NLL game, they're bitching at the refs too. It's just part of sport. NFL guys complain at the refs in the Super Bowl. It's just
Oh,
no one,
yeah, everybody
no
complains
one
about the
loves the
refs.
refs.
Yeah, nobody ever does it quite right. Yeah, I've
It's
been stalking some social media pages here. This was a little bit of footage from that Isotopes game.
the Weekends, they posted some good videos. Which actually, there's one of their videos. I hope it comes up here. I actually was kind of creeping on it today. There was some argument on a video that they posted on whether or not that was a legal play or not. Which I can tell you, since we're playing NLL rule books within 3 yards of the ball, man ball rules apply like it would in a field. And I know there are some leagues that don't allow that, and it might be different stuff. But if ball's on the ground and you're within 3 yards of it, you gotta keep your head on a swivel because in this league it's technically legal.
Yeah.
I think it might be the next one if it's rolling through all of them. But I know that was this one right there. Like
Oh,
technically in the NLL, that's shoulder to chest.
I lost her
Um,
too. Where the heck was it? Yeah.
uh,
No, that's the big thing, like you said. If it's the next one, I think, right?
yeah, this one. Yeah, I mean, it's a vicious hit, but it's shoulder to chest. I mean, he didn't fall through to the head or anything like that. Like, I mean, in the moment, it might look dirty because he kind of snaps his head back a little bit, but to my knowledge, in the NLL, that's a clean hit.
Well, no, like you said, the big thing is he doesn't follow up with the hands under the chin.
Yeah.
And thankfully, the kid, whoever 16 is, actually knows how to fall and doesn't hit his head.
Yeah. Tuck the chin, pop your
Yeah,
head up.
on the
But,
shoulder. No, that was it. That I don't know. It looks clean to me. Like you said, you're not. He doesn't hit him from behind. Doesn't hit him in the back.
which don't get me wrong, if he's by the boards and he hits the boards on the way down, that's a penalty. But
That's a different. Yeah.
but out in the open field, if the ball's at your feet, unfortunately, you got to keep your head on a swivel. Like that's a legal play. I think Can-Am and maybe the CLA, they don't allow that, right? You got to play the ball first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is funny because Can-Am is brutal when it
Yeah.
comes to some
Everything
of
else
their
is fair game.
they fucking beat the shit out. Oh, sorry, but they beat the snot out. Yeah, I love. Yeah, Can-Am is definitely a blast to watch. Yeah, we see fights in there all the time. It's definitely a different league than what you guys are trying to accomplish. But the yeah, it's something to see, and you see the emotion that gets played in it, and it's so nice to see the players starting to transfer. Basically, we're getting more guys closer to that passion level of
Mm-hmm.
the physicality, but not there's a very fine line between a good physical hard hit like that and taking a cheap shot of the guy running. The
Yeah.
guy's within the ball. He very easily could come down. That guy broke down. He didn't hit him in the back. He didn't cross check him. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's a very fine
Maybe,
line, and God
but
bless
clean
those
hit. It was a
refs.
clean hit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
God
Yeah.
bless those refs making those like split second decisions. I've got no desire. I just realized we didn't even make it through all of the rest of the leaderboard. Uh, s- and so we definitely had to talk the Pacific Northwest. Although I am surprised. I don't know. Is Dave not keeping stats, or is he just not on the leaderboard?
No,
I would
there's no way.
imagine. Yeah, I would imagine he's got more than 8 saves.
Yeah, they must just not might not be taking stats, but I
Come
mean,
on, Dave, get it
Dave, I
together.
love you, but I mean, if you want to be a top goalie in the league and you want me to post you on social media, you got to be on the leaderboard. So, I mean, that just goes to show. I mean, looks like the other teams are doing it right.
Yeah, and then we've got the Oak City Owls all over it for the
Yeah,
South Atlantic.
I will say they are a lot more active than their rivals. And then same thing in my region. I don't think the other teams cut stats this weekend, so we're going to dominate it. But
I love it though, dominating. So we just look at the stats, and then instead of upstate, we'll just next week we'll highlight whatever stats aren't put in from everybody, and we'll just go through
yeah,
and all all those teams will be the shout outs. But
yeah,
oh my goodness, we've been doing this for an hour already. Could you believe it?
no, actually, time flies.
Yeah,
Time flies when you're having fun, right?
it is. It does. But so what did we talk about everything we wanted to? Because I know we wanted to talk about a few things as far as going over the rules. We kind of touched upon that and how things are going. Um,
Um,
Nationals, we've all talked about now, although we didn't actually really announce it. I guess Chicago, it's official. We weren't on last week, so
Yeah, we're going to Chicago, technically in Naperville, but short drive from Chicago. We really like the arena. It's similar layout to last year with Columbus. They don't have the mezzanine and bar, unfortunately, but to my knowledge, they do have somewhere that I think sells beer there. I gotta double check that. But it's a good space. We'll have 2 floors running on Friday, 1 floor the rest of the weekend. With 10 teams, we're changing the format, so we're gonna do 4 pools for the first day. 3 of those pools will have 3 teams. One of those pools will have 4 teams. And then we're going to divide the teams just so everybody knows, because I know last year there was a little bit of argument of how the pools got seeded. We're going to divide the teams based off of if a team from last year makes it, like the top 4 teams. And then, if those teams don't make it, then whatever team from below them gets moved up. But
yeah,
like hypothetically, the final 4 last year was the Wild first, Maine second, Seattle third, the Grizzlies fourth. So if all 4 of those teams make it back to nationals, they'll be in their own separate pool, and then the rest of the teams will get drawn at random. Just to kind of break that up, just it's kind of similar to how the World Cup does it. A little different than how World Lacrosse does it with that like blue group, since everybody at nationals will be talented enough to kind of hold their own.
yeah,
So we're kind of dividing that up, and then everyone will play running clock pool play games for seeding, and then after seeding, based on score differential, and just total points, we'll have 1 and 2 seeds will get buys, and then everyone else will play a bracket play. You get a consolation game if you lose in the first round, but other than that, it's
just
should
two.
be 4 guaranteed games and 2 guaranteed games in pool play, and then a bracket play game, and then you're done. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the thing. And now I've heard a lot of teams talk. They wish there was a way to incentivize um, out of division play. For teams like something. Is there any chance we could see a wild card at some point where, like, if you have at least four out of division games, we take the best one?
Um, we've talked about that of adding a, especially with 10 teams. It took us a while to kind of figure out the format. So we thought, is there a way we can make 12 or 11 doesn't really work, but and we talked about it, but there's not enough teams yet. I think we're a year or two away from this of teams who are truly playing out of region travel games, and it's a legitimate travel game where like their whole roster comes
That's a
outside of that small pocket that is the Northeast.
Yeah, because that's from Newburgh essentially where the West Rock team is located to the farthest team away is Thousand Islands is basically the minimum travel, I believe, for that Houston for the South.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that you could literally travel the entire two divisions in upstate in the metro area and still not do it. But I know we wanted to talk about the partners real quick too because we haven't been hitting them, but the
Uh,
PLL with the discounts, and then we had the second slide is where a lot of the teams are having their website set up.
yeah. They're PLO. We got discount tickets. They're all on the website, and I'm posting them out on the stories as the weeks come along. Which they started adding beer gardens. I know people in the past have complained that the games are more kid friendly, but they really wanted us to emphasize that they're starting to add beer gardens, and those tickets get you in the beer garden. So it's not just a kid friendly show anymore. And then yeah, Second Slide is our official e-commerce partner, and I think 10 or 12 teams have stores with them, and they're doing really well.
Yeah, I
And then
see
NABLL,
the beer garden sponsors
yeah,
the beer. Yeah, so definitely
yeah,
check out the PLL stuff, and they've got the beer gardens now. They want everybody to know. Second slide, yeah, like you were saying, the teams that have it, it is a great website to have set up. It makes it super easy for the teams for people to just get stuff. You literally just kind of point and click.
yeah. It's essentially drop shipping. I mean, you pay an upfront fee, and then it's a very easy way to kind of make a little bit of side cash off of your brand, which is why we want the teams to own their own brands. And they handle literally everything else for you. You just got to have the website up and running, and they do literally everything else for you. And then the NLA, I think they just had their training camps this last week, I believe. I gotta look at their schedules when their games are. We actually have a handful of our East Coast teams have guys in that league, so I'm kind of curious to see how their league gets up and running this year.
I was
And then,
Justin McKinney that runs the Collar City team. He plays for them. I know there's a couple guys. Will McKinney, Brendan Murphy. So yeah,
yeah,
there's a bunch of guys that do. I am interested to see. We'll have to keep an eye out for that. Lacrossing barriers. Shout out to those guys with all they do up there. I've got a couple
yeah.
stickers myself.
Anybody that wants to do anything to grow the game of lacrosse, talk to Lacrosse and Barriers. They have the perfect model, and I don't think I've talked to a more genuine person that just wants to just see the game get grown. And they do a great job with their model with everything they do. So if you want to do anything to grow the game and you don't know what to do, hit them up. They'll get you pointed in the right direction.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Tim. I think this was an absolute blast. Plus, I forgot to tell you, we do a fake hang up here, and so we just say goodbye to each other.
All right.
I'll tell you
Have a
though,
good
because half the time I hang up on these and everybody just clicks off, and I'm like, all right, see ya. But yeah,
one.
so next week you're gonna be on again. We
Mhm.
are supposed to have the Grand Rapids Grizzlies GM on, so that'll be exciting. And then Nick Midmo's gonna be on the week after with Justin McKinney. We're gonna try to you know bounce some. We're trying to get as many of these GMs on as we can to try to get everybody on the same page and let everybody talk because each team has like that unique pocket of players that where the talent and where the knowledge comes from. And that's what I love hearing is like, okay, how did you guys get into this and how did you get lucky enough to find somebody who's teaching everybody?
Wait, we're gonna have Mimbo and McKinney on at the same time.
I believe so, yes.
Can we have them rock paper scissors for the King's name?
That is a good idea. We can
Winner
get
takes all.
let's get Dave too. We'll get Dave.
Yeah.
We there can
We'll
be
go
only one.
Texas coin flip. There can only be one king.
I love it.
I love it. Perfect.
All right, so thanks and we'll see everybody next week.
Everybody.